Thank you so much, and hello everybody. I hope you had a good lunchtime and you're ready to not fall asleep, hopefully. So without further ado, let's crack on. My name is Eva Salahi, I'll be moderating today's session, and I'd like to ask our panelists to briefly introduce yourselves, please. And could you answer the question, is AI going to encourage mediocrity or excellence in professional services? Could we start with you, Richard, please?
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Richard Susskind. I'm half a lawyer and half a technologist. I wrote my PhD in the early 80s in artificial intelligence and really have spent most of my life since then thinking about how AI might improve the work of professionals. But in the end, my conclusion is quite different. The real power of AI is not about improving the power of professionals. It's actually about empowering those who are not professionals. So what interests me, to give two quick examples, in medicine and law, is self-care. The way in which we might be able to provide tools, not yet, because I think the short-term impact of AI, I think, is probably being overstated just now. But over the next few years, we can imagine how it is we might empower many people who would otherwise not be able to afford professional service, medical service, legal service, actually to gain access to the knowledge and the insight they need to solve their problems. So I think a lot of the debate within the professions, what does it mean for us, is asking the wrong question. The question is, how is it that AI can empower those who otherwise, particularly those who otherwise would have no reasonable access?
Is it going to be more accurate and helpful than internet diagnostics? Because, you know, we can do that today, and it doesn't really help us, I don't think.
It's early days yet. I think in the long run, and we're all seeing this already in medical diagnostics, for example, there are systems that are wildly better, not just than individual practitioners, but whole teams of physicians. And in law, similarly, in, for example, the review of massive amounts of documents, it's already clear, and it's actually been clear for about a decade, that these systems are outperforming junior lawyers and paralegals. The most fascinating thing about all of this is there's no finishing line. The technologies are advancing at the most remarkable pace. And so we should not really be evaluating the potential of the technology in terms of today's limitations. People want to talk about hallucinations and all the rest of it. The interesting question is not GPT-4, it's GPT-8. What will that look like?
Thank you so much. Daniel, can we come to you, please?
Thank you. Well, I'm Daniel Dahl-Steinberg. I'm a partner and founder at Edenbase. I've been in disruptive tech, either building it or deploying it as an entrepreneur for over 30 years. And now I run this fund, Edenbase, that invests in these technologies because I very much see them coming. I wrote a book in lockdown where I started mapping out what the future is going to be like. Fortunately, a lot of it's right, so that makes me feel very good. In terms of your question, you know, is it going to change professional services? I think professional services is just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to change everything. And if we focus really on AI rather than all these technologies, and these technologies, I think the point about these technologies is not that they are exponentially increasing. The point is at the moment they're becoming general purpose, and that means people can use them. So the innovation of ChatGPT was not the GPT itself, it's the fact that it was able to be used by anybody, anywhere, and it can be integrated anywhere. We're seeing that, I mean, we were talking this morning about blockchain. That's very hard actually to integrate because of a lot of issues, but that's becoming general purpose too. Quantum computing, which is by far the most powerful of these technologies, is slowly becoming general purpose. We've seen abstractors that allow you to take a spreadsheet and run them through a quantum computer. Fortunately, they don't do much yet, but you have communications, you have immersive technologies. As Ronit said this morning, everyone's forgotten about the metaverse. You know, we have this thing which is Amara's law. We expect enormous things from it, and then it doesn't happen, and 10 years later we don't know how we got into this state. You know, this is happening with metaverse. They are building these technologies on an industrial scale, and then you have the additive printing, which is putting cells, allowing you to produce anything you want, either with any material, including genetic. And these are very, very powerful. So I think we're coming into an age where anybody can deploy these. And it's not, you know, Richard and I agree on a lot of things, though we had a debate last time, but, you know,
I did encourage
it's not what happens to the legal profession or the accounting profession, it's what is that profession? What happens when computers control our decision-making processes? Do we need law in its current structure? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's the type of questions we need to be starting to talk about now, because otherwise it will catch us by surprise. And just to finish off, there are a bunch of well-intentioned people, I list about 20 of them in the book, who are building these technologies for the future of the world, in a world that they see as very positive for everybody. But it may not be that positive for a lot of us. So, you know, let's make sure that more of us are on the side that there's an opportunity rather than the threat.
One of the issues I actually wanted to touch on, and this kind of segues into your point, is what will happen to things like gender equality? You know, I saw this stat the other day that 1% of VC investment goes to female founders, and so a lot of the world that we are currently building, the digital infrastructure, is very much a kind of male world. So will AI help with these issues or make them worse?
I think in the medium term, probably make worse. I mean, it's very clear that the industry is dominated by, it's not just males, it's a very narrow community. But I think to some extent to ask that question is to assume that the future is going to be quite similar to the past and we'll be asking the same kinds of questions about humanity. For me, the question for the 30s will be less about gender equality and more about our relationship with these unfathomably capable machines we're developing. How do we share a planet with these capable systems that can outperform us? We're used to the idea of machines.
I wasn't scared of AI until now, but now I'm absolutely terrified.
Well, we're used to the idea of fields in machines in fields, machines in factories. We're really not used to the idea of machines taking on tasks that we think are the unique preserve of human beings. And I wonder, maybe 10, 15 years' time, if we'll look back on what is undoubtedly one of the huge issues of our day, gender inequality, and think, actually, the relationship between human beings and these machines we've created.
We'd better get these machines on site, ladies.
Is the issue of our
That's what I'm thinking. Sorry, thank you for that. Daniel, do you have any?
I would answer it in a slightly different way, which is, you know, the protocol layer of these technologies, which is what was talked about a lot this morning, which is the MMLs, the GPTs, the quantum products themselves and the hardware and the blockchain is very much built and controlled by a certain set of people. And that will probably make matters worse in the short term, as Richard says. But it's not that's, I think, the opportunity. The opportunity here is the general purpose nature of these technologies, which means the application layer. And some stats I looked at recently were the protocol layer and the abstraction layer, which is the layer on top, is probably going to be worth about $1.5 trillion by 2030. The application layer is going to be something like $16 trillion. And nobody is working on that yet, or very few. That is where all the value is going to be created. And just going back to my book a second, you know, I list these titans that are controlling this. They're not all tech titans. Some are tech, some are people that just understand it. But the last person on my list is my metaphor. She's called Amaka. She's an African child. She's 10 years old now. And she's building a technology using these technologies. She doesn't know how to code. She's fluent in her native language. She builds it all in any single language in the world. And it becomes the biggest application in the world. And that can happen because you can reach 100 million users in a few days if you're lucky now, because everybody's connected. And that is why I think these technologies, if we look at them and build the foundations correctly, which is what I think we have to concern ourselves with, the opportunity for people to create applications. And it goes to the other side as well, which is at the moment to build an application for 50 people is virtually impossible because the commercial and the money you can make out of it and the opportunity is small. But if the cost of entry is very, very low, you will be able to build applications that are tailored to certain people. And then when you add them together in combination, you can start doing really cool things. And I actually think we have the opportunity, if we don't regulate the hell out of it and stop it, to make the world much more accessible by everybody, to build this stuff and to use this stuff.
Can I pick out just one issue in that? What is fascinating already with generative AI, which I stress is just the latest chapter in AI. It's not the first chapter, absolutely not the last chapter. But what I find fascinating is systems that themselves can generate code. Now, we've been thinking about this actually since the 80s, these systems that actually write systems themselves. It is entirely foreseeable that vast virtual worlds will be created not by conventional software developers of whatever gender, but actually by the systems themselves. And it is a fascinating prospect that the environment in which we will live in the 30s, for example, will have in large part been developed and delivered by technologies themselves and not directly by human beings. Now, whether or not these systems carry forward all the biases that I think you were concerned about implicit in your question, I think is one of the big challenges of today. But fascinating in that respect that there's interesting work going on. It sounds slightly circular, but in the whole idea of synthetic data, that rather than generating systems on the basis of flawed, errorful, biased data, AI systems themselves generate the data on the basis of which these later AI systems are then developed. So I stress again, what's completely fascinating about this is hardly a day passes where there's not a new development in this area. And we should seek to define it not in terms of AI or any enabling technology. The big point is our systems, our machines, are becoming increasingly capable at an accelerating rate.
They already are, though. I mean, if you look at social media, all the big social media companies use the AI is self-learning. It's not controlled by people. It makes decisions on its own. It's being trained on you. And there is no way that even if every employee in that organization tried to do what their AI did and learn at that rate, they'd be able to deal with it. So these technologies have been, for the last 20 years, have been completely controlling and making decisions and learning about us in a way that humans can't.
The data point is really interesting because that kind of goes to my initial question about mediocrity and excellence. Because if, just the mean reversing means that most of us is, it's the law of averages, right? You kind of have the most in the middle. So wouldn't AI learn that? And wouldn't this kind of self-feeding process lead to actually just more of, average output rather than the outliers and the sort of interesting, excellent thinking and solutions?
I think that's not the experience so far of these systems, that they do seem to perform in particular domains at a remarkably high standard. What I was struck by reading Stephen Wolfram, he's one of the great computer scientists of our age, he wrote an introductory book to ChatGPT, and how often he says, we don't really understand why the systems do this. So we try to explain how it is that ChatGPT works exactly as the way you've done in terms of how it is, some kind of regression to the mean, then surely we're just going to get some kind of anodyne compromise of all sorts of different insights. And we try to perhaps conceptualize what the system does in these terms. But the experience so far, and I think it'll be your personal experience if you've used these systems, is that they're already performing at a very high level. Not only that, you can require them to perform at a high level. I've done experiments to say, can you write a brief for a 4-year-old, for a 12-year-old, so you could equally say, could you write it for a Nobel Prize winner? These systems we can encourage them to perform at a high level already.
Fascinating. Any questions at this point? No? Okay. Is AI a tool?
Yes, yes, it's a tool. It's clearly a tool. We can use it, and it can't yet build itself and have self-control. So I think what ChatGPT did very cleverly, or the innovation, was that it made it a tool for everybody. And it's a tool that, as Richard said, we don't quite know how it works underneath, even the people that are building it. I think it goes back to the 3 steps I think everybody needs to take, which is knowledge. You need to build knowledge. You need to understand how these impact you, because they are increasing exponentially, we're increasing linearly. We need to start using these technologies and deploying them and trying to understand it. And we need to invest our time and money where we can in creating those applications that maintain it as a tool for the people that we want it to be for. And if we do that across a very diverse range of people, we will have a better outcome. Because at the moment, it's a tool for 25 or 30 people, and the rest of us are just users.
Richard?
I think we conceptualize it just now, and we hope the AI is a tool to promote the social and economic goods that are important to us as human beings. But I think we can see, it's certainly foreseeable and conceivable, that in some sense, these tools become self-serving. And this underpins the concerns that led to the Bletchley meeting, of which I, for one, was a fan, that it is at least conceivable in a way that it wasn't, I don't think it was when perhaps science fiction writers were writing about it in the 80s, but we've seen the emergence now of technologies that do really seem to be so powerful that, and I think it's unhelpful when I'm about to say that they have a mind of their own. But if in performance this is what they're like, one can imagine, you can ask the question, for whom are these tools? Are they tools for the benefit of humankind? Are they tools for the small number of very large tech companies who own and control most of the data and technology? Or will they be, in due course, tools whose main purpose is to propagate further tools? These are unanswered questions. But I think the slightly naive assumption that people make, well, we'll remain the masters and they'll be very much under our thumb. Already, as I say, we struggle to understand how they do what they do. And that, for me, is one of the most disconcerting elements of the technology, that the output is now surprising us. And that is why we should be cautious. And that's not a 2030 observation, that's an observation today, that they perform in ways that we don't understand. It transpires if you build systems of a certain level of complexity, we might understand their design, but we don't understand them in daily operation. And we knew this with Y2K. Many people were saying, well, why on earth can't computer scientists tell us whether or not it's going to be a problem? And the reality is the systems are already so complex that the innumerable permutations of their operation were beyond the comprehension of human beings. So, yes, our inclination is to say, let's of course keep these systems very much under our thumb, but in practice we're already developing systems that are performing in ways that we don't understand.
I mean, I think, just to finish on that, I think we're moving from a deterministic model to a stochastic model. And a deterministic model is where we program a computer and its output is what we say it's going to be. Quantum and AI are stochastic, which means the responses are random. And as soon as you have random output from inputs, you start losing control. And so it's really important now, as I keep saying, that the application layer is so important now because of the random nature of the products that we're building.
I feel a little bit like, wolves when they approached humans. Like, I don't know how it's going to go, but I think I'll do it.
I'd like to say something slightly different, though. The direction of the conversation is gone as it has gone. But my fascination with AI is this, that we have in our world a justice system that's broken. Most people can't afford it. We have a health system that's broken. We have an educational system that's broken. We actually have a finance system that's broken. The underlying processes of audits are broken. And I work in each of these fields, I can very clearly see within a decade that we could make massive global improvements to people's health, to their wealth, to their security, and so forth. So the fascinating thing about AI is, on the one hand, I and others can see that many of our fundamental social challenges might actually be sorted through this technology. And on the other hand, there's this worry, are we creating a monster? And this is the tension we're going to have to deal with. It's not clear to me, actually, that the systems that we'll use to improve how we administer justice and health and so forth will be the same systems that will actually potentially give rise to these existential risks. But I wouldn't want people going away and thinking this is all downside. The difficulty, the drama that's unfolding is there is a dark side and a light side to this technology.
Equilibrium, hopefully, at some point. So thank you so much. Please join me in thanking our panelists for their thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ava. That's very kind.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.